So, 45, so I mean, who is going to be in that environment?
All right, but the argument of this administration is this, that we have to raise these funds internally as opposed to borrowing externally, because they say what is choking us at this moment is the debt that has been accrued this far. David D talked about the interest on these loans, that these loans are coming into maturity in this financial year.
What is choking us is their incompetence. Yeah, and first of all, frankly, some of us believe, because these men and women are not new to running government. I mean, it's as though they are out on a scheme, frankly, to destroy it. Look, the total debt is 50-50, roughly. 50% domestic, 50% foreign. The total amount of interest payments on domestic debt are 3 times. So if you take the Kenya shilling amount of how much you pay, 3 times the total amount paid in external debt. Why? Because domestic interest rates are right now at 11, 12, 14, 15%. They know this. So to really keep on, first of all, lying to the country and bringing up excuses is really reprehensible. They know this. Now, what is the solution? What is the way out of it? The way out of it is to reduce interest rates on domestic short-term debt. But what they're doing every week, if you look at the Treasury bill auction, is to borrow on the short-term end of the market, so 90-day Treasury bills. In fact, that's all the market is willing to lend them, and to borrow at even higher and higher and higher rates. And that's what is called debt distress. So they're not making, you know, if you're in a hole, you have to stop digging. And the way to stop digging this hole, first of all, is to dial down on the domestic interest rates, particularly on short-term debt. And if you do so, you, first of all, reduce the debt service amount, the interest that you're paying. You avail perhaps the opportunity to change the nature of the debt, because you can then sell cheaper debt to replace older, more expensive debt. If you do so, you also make it easier for the same private sector that you are trying to tax to death to have access to affordable credit, perhaps, that then they can attempt to produce. So, but what we are hearing from our colleagues on a daily basis, frankly, is excuse after excuse, is an approach to this matter in a don't care attitude, and it is a deliberate attempt, in my view, to make the situation worse. If we could not afford the budget at 3.2 trillion, how will we afford it at 3.6 trillion?
We're told, I'm just quoting what I heard the President's chief economic advisor say. He said politics is expensive, and Kibaki paid a heavy price for ignoring it. And the other argument that he presented is these savings will take time. So they're looking for low-hanging fruit.
In which way did Kibaki pay a price? I mean, look, 2008 was the first time I went to Parliament. And 2008 ended up with a grand coalition government that delivered a new constitution for Kenya that Kenya had been looking for the previous 3 decades. How can you say that that is a heavy price? That was a fantastic turn of events that made Kenya take the freedom we enjoy now is very much because of what happened at that time. So that analysis is completely, well, let me be charitable.
Right. Yeah. But Mheshimiwa Kero, I hosted last week the CEO of the Institute for Economic Affairs, and that is Kwame Owino. And he said we are at very real risk of debt default. So if that is indeed the situation, then we need to raise cash, and we need to raise cash fast. What options does that leave this administration?
Well, why do you like saying we have to raise cash? Don't you have anything else to say? Like, we need to reduce our expenditure. Exactly. I mean, you see, the thing is, if that's the thing, that is the narrative that is creating all this problem of the debt in the first place. That is the same narrative which is creating debt. If this government was not collecting new debt, Your own figures published in the media, the first 5 months up to December, they have collected almost 578 billion in debt. This week alone, the government signed $3 billion from Africa Exim Bank. That's another 400 billion they'll collect. Every month they're collecting. In fact, I believe by June, this administration will have collected nearly $1 trillion more or signed on to $1 trillion more in new debt. So, I mean, if you're still collecting debt, you can't say, how do we finance our all debt? I mean, so the issue is, as a government, are you willing really to cut down your expenditure, reduce the size of the government, reduce your size of operations, stop all this wastage, stop all this political expediency? You go out, you know, you tell my community, I'll build for you this. To get campaigning for 2027 today, you know, with promises to build massive projects that sometimes are not even within your mandate. It's for the county governments. At the risk of, you know, starving counties and other vital so the issue then is, for me, the issue in this country is never about revenue. So as long as, so me, I never subscribe to any narrative that says, how then can government raise revenue? Because I simply say, no, it shouldn't raise revenue. It's collecting enough. Let it spend what it's collecting properly. It will be adequate to pay the debt. It will be adequate to run the government in a very efficient way.
All right. We continue this conversation on the other side of this break. We get more substantively into the issue of counties, because health workers have said they have had more strikes under devolution than they did prior to devolution. Is that contributed to by the delay in release of funds from the exchequer? One of the proposals that has been made, and Mheshimiwa Kerr also talked about starving counties, one of the proposals that has been made by the Council of Governors is to delink the Ministry of Finance from the National Treasury. We take a look at all of that, including a proposal. I was chatting with Mheshimiwa Kerr. I don't want to preempt his remarks, but he was suggesting that perhaps the CRA's recommendations, yes, should be made binding and not, you know, take it or leave it type of situation. We'll get into all of that on the other side of this break.
Yo, Butro Seke, the sharp god up in the mix. Now I'm saying NTV, shout out to you, bro. Keep it locked. Hey.
Sauti yako ina sound vizuri kwenye masikio.
I like it. Come to the dance floor, babe.
Angie.
Leo tuna festa pe banga.
Festa pe banga.
Another banga. And it's just like an amazing mix.
I am happy today. Sin koma vitu nanilea.
Oh yeah. Inaweka shida chini na tupa mikono juu. Banjuka juu.
No compromise, this the hottest combo.
Unistima, uninare.
On NTV, don't touch that dial. Not it. No one
tunamwombea hata honorable Raila Odinga aweze kuzeeka akiwa na amani.
That prayer is a very clever concept of communication in politics. Najua kila mtu sasa ametulia, anataka kuona baba akijibu maombi. Yes.
Kama mtu ana drive, kuna mtu anakuanga na mguu mzito, hata kuna mtu ukipea gari yako, wewe distance unakunywa ngadhao, pengine atakunywa 15.
Next time nikipea mse gari lazima nijue anavaa kiatu size gani. And you're very big on mileage.
Hiyo ndo sasa
it's very key.
Yeah, sana.
I hope aingiangi kwa personal life yako, because that would mean
that moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Get ready to tantalize your taste buds and embark on a culinary journey with Pishi Bomba, the ultimate cooking show that brings the flavors of the world right into your living room. Tune in this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. with me, Claire Karatu, for a mouth-watering adventure.
Pishi Bomba in association with Coca-Cola.
Make your mealtime more magical. Buy any participating pack. Check under the cap to get your code and stand a chance to win free food shopping for a year, plus millions in instant cash, airtime, and shopping vouchers.
I came in, she pulled out the gun and said if she can't have me, nobody can. What do I do?
It's your fault that my marriage is falling apart.
Diana.
Get out of here! Get out of here now! Get out!
What this woman needs from you is simply your attention. Give her that, and you'll see she'll stop acting so stupid!
Andres? Don't tell me the cab stand I called sent you to pick me up.
Quite a coincidence. Natalia.
Head over heels.
Fruity freshness in every sip.
In life, you could be eager to be employed or be self-employed. Either way, you do need the right skills. This is the point where Goodwall is essential to you. Goodwall is a professional social media platform that offers you earning and learning opportunities. It offers you great chances to grow in your career, learn new skills, showcase your existing skills, network with like-minded people, or get job opportunities. Nation Media Group, in partnership with Goodwall, aim at providing solutions to unemployed African youth, creating digital content that inspires young people to stretch themselves and get the right skills that are useful to employers and their peers. So, how can you be part of this? Every month, we'll give you a chance to win $150 through our monthly challenge. Anyone can participate. Just look out for the challenges on NTV Kenya's social media platforms. Join the challenge now.
Good morning, rise and shine. Thank you for being with us dark and early on the Morning Fix. My name is David Ayuke.
And I'm Mariam Bishar. This is where good music lives, and guaranteed your weekday mornings are never going to be the same again.
Yes! Wake up to the sound of David and Mariam on Nation FM.
Every single day.
They're your morning hosts with the most, bringing you the energy you need to start your day. Nation FM, where good music lives.
Let me see y'all
dance for every sexy body girl.
Dance.
Utisi kijana yangu achana na wasichana.
Mama, wasichana gani jameni? Si mimi na Google formula.
Nimekuona uko kwa Instagram.
Sikuwa IG, nilikuwa na Google.
Google gani imejaa wasichana hivyo? Utisi dunia mbaya, wachana na hao wasichana.
Ai, wasichana wa gani mama?
Ukitaka bibi siku moja, enda kwa kanisa. Wachana na hii wasichana ya Instagram na TikTok.
Hata sina Instagram na TikTok.
Mwanamke ni roho.
Ai, tena si dada alisema ni tabia.
Sasa dada ni mwanamke. Si wacha nikwambie, mimi ndo najua mwanamke ni roho.
Mama, sikuwa naangalia mwanamke kwa Google.
Nyamaza nikwambie. Walisema mke mwema anatoka kwa Bwana. Unatoka unaenda wapi? Mke mwema anabaki kwa Bwana.
To get relationship advice by Mama Otis, dial *811*930#. Skiza na Nation.
Pata taarifa teke na e-paper. Stay in the know on the go. Getting the full story Bilangori. To sign up, choose your preferred subscription. Use the promo code SUBZ22 to get 20% off and pay. Get your favorite newspaper and enjoy the truth anywhere, anytime. For inquiries, email epaper@ke.nationmedia.com or call 0790 Subscribe today and get your taarifa teke.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
right, welcome back to AM Live, and with me in studio, and the topic of conversation that we're getting into is this: not enough money to go around freeing counties from the yoke of omba. Is it a fight? Has it been a fight for survival for the counties since 2013? With me in studio, we have Nderitu Mureithi, former Governor Laikipia, ex-Assistant Minister of Industrialization Bill Okero, former Mandera Senator, former Chair Finance and Budget Committee while he was in the Senate, and ex-Shadow Finance Minister. We're looking at the Finance Bill of 2023 and how the Kenya Kwanza administration hopes to finance its budget. Let me quickly take a look at what else is making headlines, and we can get into the conversation on counties. We've taken a look at Business Daily. What else is on the front page of the Daily Nation? Raila to Ruto, I'm giving you a final chance to end row. Opposition Chief Raila Odinga says his Azimio la Umoja team will go back to the streets if the government side does not show goodwill and honesty in the bipartisan talks to resolve the August 2022 post-election dispute. I see here Waititu suffers blow as court freezes, quote, unexplained assets. We did have a story filed on that. You heard it at the top of the last of this hour. Actually, we are not yet quite at 7. And you can find that on the NTV Kenya YouTube channel. Revealed cost of degree courses, a new university funding plan. You can find that on the back page of the Daily Nation. And storm over sale of T-Firm. Leaders threaten class action suit against James Finley. What else is on the front page of the Business Daily? Ruto's 3.6 trillion shilling budget to put extra strain on companies. I think we've looked at that somewhat. Looking at the ticker, ex-Stanchart employee in 654 million shilling theft case set free, and Nairobi court has acquitted a former operations assistant at Standard Chartered Bank who was charged with stealing more than 654 million shillings in US dollars equivalent that was wired to a firm in China in 2013. Small businesses to tap up to 400,000 shilling Fuliza overdraft. Businesses can now tap up to 400,000 shillings Fuliza overdraft in the latest improvement to the Safaricom facility that has only been open to individuals seeking to complete payments when they have insufficient funds in their M-Pesa. And duty-free sugar imports failed to tame high retail prices after 4 months. Duty-free sugar imports have failed to cool high retail prices of the commodity despite being shipped into the country since January when the window was first opened. Taifa Leo inasema hivi: Uhuru alilaza damu. Am I reading right? Am I reading right? Taifa Leo, Uhuru alilaza damu chamani. Sabina being quoted here. Kaimu kiongozi wa chama cha Jubilee Sabina Chege jana alitangaza kuwa aliamua kumtimua rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta kutoka uongozi kwa chama hicho kukinusuru kisisambaratike zaidi. Reads at the very top, adai Kenyatta hana usemi tena kuhusiana na siasa za eneo pana la Mlima Kenya. I see at the very top here, Mashogu afafanua kuhusu karo and simu ya Ruto kwa Raila iliyositisha maandamano. This one done by Roslyn Obala did this one. Interesting. Roslyn Obala and Charles Wasonga. Wataka ripoti ya sukari itekelezwe. Viongozi kutoka magharibi wataka serikali ikague na kufufua viwanda kadhaa vya sukari. And mhubiri Ezekiel achiliwa huru na mahakama. Let's take a look at, did we finish with the Standard? Let's see what else they have, or is it all to do with the finance bill? At the very top, James Finley, firm sold to Sri Lankans, revealed Kenya's best and worst paying professions, and was there an attempt on Putin's life? More on that in the Standard. And on the front page of the Star, Treasury says the section was declared unconstitutional. Which section? Well, it's explained in their headline. Treasury counters Ruto MPs on Raila and Uhuru Parks. Ndungu team says section that denies the 2 pension should be repealed. All right, Commander Banks on Somalia tour for peace in DRC. Pastor Ezekiel is released on 3 million shilling bond. And I see here bill on conflict of interest cages civil servants. Civil servants are likely to face tough laws that would, among others, bar them from doing business with the government for 2 years after leaving office. This is contained in the Conflict of Interest Bill 2023. And this is just a graphic that sort of looks at some of the proposals in the finance bill. Kenya Kwanza lays out how it will fund their 3.6 trillion shilling budget. This is what they highlight: deduction on basic salary for National Housing Development Fund. That's a 3% deduction with employer matching the contribution. 10% customs value on cement clinker. 20% of amount of advancing a tax dispute to the Tax Appeals Tribunal. And withholding 15% withholding tax on digital content monetization, 5% excise duty again on human hair, artificial nails, wigs, eyelashes, and related products, and 10% excise duty on imported cellular phones. They tell us the story is on page 4 through 5 of the Star. Okay, we will leave these papers here, but I'm curious what Mheshimiwa Nderitu Mureithi makes of the installation of Sabina Chege as the party leader by the Kanini Kega faction of Jubilee.
Oh, it's frankly a heap of rubbish. You know, parties are institutions that work within rules and laws. You see, you and I, for example, on this show, you know, you can declare yourself president or I can declare myself, but it doesn't make us that. If you look at one of the headlines there, Treasury has come out to say that the idea of, I mean, this section that people keep quoting that can deny, you know, a Kenyan who has left their responsibilities, say as Prime Minister or President, their benefits because they are engaged in political activity has already been declared unconstitutional. And the Treasury has moved ahead with that. So the very basis that these other fellows were using to claim that they have removed their party leader has already been shown to be false. In any case, Sabina is actually not a member of Jubilee. Now, by operation of law, if you read the constitution of Jubilee, and I think the Registrar of Political Parties can confirm that to you, the day back in October when this you know, individual and others decided to associate with another political party and promote its policies, that is the day they ceased to be members of Jubilee. And that is Article 6 of the Jubilee Party Constitution. So all that we are seeing is theatrics, and I would expect that in the fullness of time, as the law takes its course, they themselves will be out of parliament because they have no basis. Like the individual you raise is nominated by Jubilee, and once you cease to be a member of a party, how can they nominate you to parliament? So really, it's a heap of rubbish, and I don't think it is worth the airtime. Let's deal with the economy.
All right. But you do know there are two sections to this law. There is Section 4 that talks about the needing a 2/3 majority vote in Parliament to revoke, as it were, those parks. But there's also Section 6, now which gives the 6-month time limit.
What the Treasury has pointed out to the National Assembly is that that act is unconstitutional because it limits the right of an individual to associate and so on. I mean, that is the headline. If you look at the story behind the headline of the Star, that's what the story is explaining. Yeah? When
it is page 6 of
yes,
the Star.
Treasury counters, That's what Treasury is explaining.
What I'm reading here is, but in a new twist, Treasury in the Finance Bill 2023 seeks to do away with Section 4 of the Retirement Benefits, that is Deputy Presidents and Designated Officers Act of 2015. And if they do that, Section 6 would still apply.
Well, I think go deeper into the detail, but what you will find is that you see, an act of parliament is subordinate to the Constitution. The Constitution guarantees all Kenyans the right to associate and the right to political activity and so on. And so this act was found to be unconstitutional. And you already see that in practice, retired Prime Minister or former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, former Vice President Musalia Mudavadi, and all the other, they are beneficiaries of this act, and their benefits have been paid, and therefore you cannot, for example, single out one particular individual. But the truth is that this particular section or the attempt to limit is unconstitutional, and Treasury has acted within law and properly so. But as I said, frankly, I consider it as a bit of hot air, where we should go back to the economy. Jubilee will follow its rules. They will go to an NDC and clean up their shop. I would expect that Sabina and her colleagues will soon be out of the seats that they have, courtesy of having been former members of Jubilee. But as I said, we should leave it there.
Okay.
Because it means nothing or rather, the real issues facing Kenyans are high cost of living and proposed taxation tabled yesterday that is going to make that cost of living even higher. What these other people are fighting about is whether they got seats, whether they got plum chair positions within committees of parliament. I mean, what has that got to do with bringing down the cost of fuel? Whether somebody was made chair of a committee in parliament and whether they feel shortchanged because they did not get those chairmanships. So we should leave that, frankly, Olive, and focus on what matters to Kenyans. Every person who has spoken to me across this country about Jubilee has really negative things to say about the behavior of individuals who have risen to position, courtesy of Jubilee, then attempting to basically hawk that responsibility to the ruling coalition for personal gain. I mean, that is not leadership, frankly, that is political conmanship.
Okay. Yeah. All right, just for clarity, so I can move us along to the questions on counties. Just for clarity, you've had us reference Section 4 and Section 6 of the Presidential Retirement Benefits Act of 2003. Section 4, which Treasury is seeking to, according to this story in The Star, seeking to do away with, is the one that states, notwithstanding the provisions of Section 3, the National Assembly may, on a motion supported by the votes of not less than 2/3 of the members thereof, resolve that a retired president or his surviving spouse, as the case may be, shall not be entitled to the whole or any part of the benefits conferred by this act on the grounds that the retired president, and we go to the Section 1B, no, actually, 1.2. Oh, yes, 1B. Held office in or actively engaged in the activities of any political party contrary to the provisions of Section 6. And perhaps it could be argued that if you do away with 4, you do away with 6. But let's take a look at 6. 6 states that the role of a retired president shall not hold office in any political party for more than 6 months after ceasing to hold office as president. I will leave that there and get us into Matters County, but there's something I also wanted your thoughts on, Mheshimiwa Kero.
Pull up the Constitution. I mean, you see, you have to...
Constitution of Kenya, freedom of association, Article 36,
and political rights and so on, so that you see why that whole Section 4 and Section 6 of the Retirement Act is deemed as an affront, and that is what the Treasury is curing in the finance bill.
All right, so this is what the Constitution says. Article 36, every person has the right to freedom of association, which includes the right to form, join or participate in the activities of an association of any kind. This is the Mwakenya that Rosalino Bala gave me yesterday. If there's another provision, do please reach out and share it. My Twitter handle is @obarrows, or you can tweet @NTV Kenya. But there is something that I wanted to get Mheshimiwa Kero's thoughts on, and if I'm not mistaken, it was in yesterday's Business Daily ticker. Let me pull it up. So remember that you can find your digital copy of the newspaper. Just go to epaper.nation.africa on your device, and you will find even archived copies of the papers. And let's see if it was in yesterday's ticker, but it's similar to the second item on today's ticker, Mheshimiwa Kero. Is it the second item or the third item that talks about duty-free sugar imports fail to tame high retail prices after 4 months? I saw something similar. Let me see if it's yesterday on the Business Daily. Yes, it is. Front page of the Business Daily, and it reads as such: duty-free cooking oil. No recipe for easy life, say manufacturers. The Kenya Association, I don't have the hard copy here. The Kenya Association of Manufacturers says the government's duty-free cooking oil imports will not alleviate the steep cost of the product due to high distribution costs amid an ongoing tussle between the state and producers.
Yeah.
Do you agree with this?
Yeah, I agree with it 110%. But let me tell you this. This duty-free things that the government came up with through Kenya National Trading Corporation is a fraud, let me tell you. It's all an attempt to try and line the pockets of those who are politically correct or those who finance this administration in their campaigns. Look at the sugar. 600,000 tons duty-free came in. The price of sugar was 5,000 something at the time. Now it's 7,000 something. It didn't help. None of them, the sugar, the maize, the rice, the wheat, flour, the beans, the cooking oil, all these things, have you seen any tender by KNTC or anything that has been given to businessmen? Really, in that sense, no. It is being given out quietly to those people up there who are connected to government. So this thing about, for example, I can understand, for example, maize, there's a shortage in our production. What has cooking oil got to do with production? Because we don't grow palm oil in this country, it comes from outside. So it's all about, and there are 15 factories who have invested over 100 billion, over 100,000 workers in the whole, industry. Today are likely to, to face, job cuts because of what the government is doing. What they did is to give the 125,000 metric tons of import to friends of the government to import duty-free and then sell it at a premium to Kenya National Trading Corporation. So I import ready-made jerrycans of fuel, say of cooking oil, say at 20 liters at $20 or $21, CIF Mombasa, and I sell it to Kenya National Trading Corporation at $25 to $30. This is something that's agreed in boardrooms. There's nothing to do, because it's not something that has been, priced in the market. And then because of you're trying to say we're creating subsidy, but what this story is saying yesterday, that even with that crooked deal, still that thing is going to be expensive, because the people who are involved are not just people who are bringing it genuinely to try and sell to KNTC. No, this is a deal that has been done so that people can be given cuts along the way. So it doesn't make sense. So in the process, you are losing tax in that import. This industry that is generating over 50 billion shillings a year is also going to shut down, and you're losing taxes again. So all these things, you are importing. Where's the maize? 1.2 million tons they were going to import by February. We are now going to June.
The Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture did put them on notice.
They got only 48 times 2, I think 96,000 tons out of 1.2 million. Is it going to change the situation? Where is the sugar you've seen? The rice, by the way, the same thing. The price of rice has not changed. Nothing. Because the whole thing is shrouded by secrecy in the way they have distributed it out to their fellows. And then there is so much rent-seeking involved, so much corruption involved, it will not serve the purpose. This whole thing about duty-free thing, KRA is going to lose big time. KRA is going to lose big time. That is why in the year ending 2022 June, KRA raised 2.03 trillion. Today, this June, they are not able to get the 2 trillion. That's the projection so far. That they have not even hit the 2 trillion. And the reason is because of what's happening in the last few months, really. I mean, there's a run on Treasury, there's a run on KRA. The things are not being done the way they should be done. And I think this is not good. So all these import things, duty-free, sit with the industry. If you're worried about sugar, call the sugar industry players. Call the cooking oil industry players. Sit with them. How can we reduce the cost of cooking oil? How can we reduce the cost of sugar? Farmers. Why do you call farmers cartels? Maize farmers. You started off by saying these are cartels. Reduce the price. You have 72 hours. Otherwise, I'm going to bring GMO. And what would be the consequences? You can't operate that way as a government. Sit with the industry, sit with the businesses, sit with the farmers, find a solution to the high cost of doing business. I think that is the way to go. Not this business of saying we'll import things duty-free. You give it to, olive and barrows and the retros, and then, the businesses themselves now collapse.
I wanted to say, a bit tongue-in-cheek, these measures have the intended effect. You see, the intended effect is rent-seeking. The intended thing is to create is corruption. It cannot possibly have been intended to bring down the cost of food for Kenyans. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it like that. I mean, these 15 factories that make edible oils, if you are really interested in bringing down, then they should have been the ones importing duty-free.
All right. Good. So I want to move us now to what brought us here. Omba ya counties. And I titled the poster Omba because the Council of Governors talked about not receiving for, is it 3 or 4 months, monies not having been released to them by the Treasury. I'm trying to find that tweet where, for the first time in as far as I'm aware, counties threatened a shutdown if the monies were not released in 14 days. Okay, I will have to scroll. I wouldn't say
it's the first time.
It's not the first time?
It's not the first time. However, the crisis seems more amplified now. Certainly, while I was serving as governor of Laikipia, there were a number of instances where disbursements were delayed. And that goes to there is a structural problem in the way the system is set up. You see, the law presents it like this. Nationally raised revenues. So it doesn't matter whether you collected 1 shilling. So if you collect 1 shilling, a minimum of 15 cents should go directly to counties. If you collect 100, then a minimum of 15 shillings should go directly to counties. But the way it is applied in practice is that, the Treasury will prioritize national government needs or expenditure over those of counties. And that is why routinely the CS Treasury will say it's because of revenue shortfall or that we haven't collected enough. That's why we haven't sent to counties. But you see, the Constitution does not look at it like that at all. It is that even if you collected 1 bob, then 15 cents should already have gone to counties. It does not say, wait until you have collected 100 billion or 500 billion, at which point then you send to counties. And that generally is what has been at the heart of the problem. The length of the delay is more, but delays have been there even in the past.
Yes, it is a perennial problem. Yeah. And like I said, if health workers were to testify, that is what they would testify to. But I did find the tweet, and here it was. This statement was made on April the 24th. It reads, the Council of Governors has issued a 14-day notice to shut down counties if February, March and April arrears are not released to the counties within 2 weeks. 31 billion shillings, if I read correctly, this week have been released. But what needs to happen so that this is a story of the past? We get into that on the other side of this break.
All transactions with DTB are secure. Achieving more for you is the least we can do. Because at Diamond Trust Bank, you don't just bank with us, you bank on us.
Mimi nilikuwa tu pale reserve. Nime-maintain, kuna fresh air, nini, na bros between peace. Alafu, imagine shemeji yangu, akakuja ametoka Nairobi, ati yentu yameomoka. Akaniambia, ati Nairobi iko vitu soft, vitu mzuri. For example, tukifika Nairobi, atanipeleka place inaitwa Village Market, tukakulia huko. Si tukapanga safari, sisi ndio hao, tumewasili wapi? Nairobi. Guess what? Huyu mtu badala ya kunipeleka Village Market, akanirutisha Village, akanipeleka Market.
To get Market Village, dial *812*799#. Skiza na Nation.
The next episode of Daring Abroad comes to you right from Atlanta City in the US, where Kenya's largest diaspora circle was founded 11 years ago.
We have contributed immensely to Kenya.
Now, the circle has just held its 9th AGM in this city.
It is a big circle, doing well, but it still has a very big potential.
Find out how members are using the circle to invest here and back home.
I have taken my first loan with the circle. I'm going to buy a property in Nanyuki.
We will also tell you about 3 members who have come together to invest in a rare side hustle on the outskirts of Atlanta City. Kenya USA Diaspora Circle this Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on NTV.
New world of flavor, fruity freshness in every sip.
Good morning, rise and shine. Thank you for being with us dark and early on the morning fix. My name is David Ayuke.
And I am Mariam Bishar. This is where good music lives, and guaranteed your weekday mornings are never going to be the same again.
Wake up to the sound of David and Miriam on Nation FM.
Every single day, every single day.
They're your morning hosts with the most, bringing you the energy you need to start your day. Nation FM, where good music lives.
Let me see y'all.
Dance.
Otis kijana yangu achana na wasichana.
Mama, wasichana gani jameni? Si mimi na Google formula.
Nimekuona uko kwa Instagram.
Sikuwa IG, nilikuwa na Google.
Google gani imejaa wasichana hivyo? Otis, dunia mbaya, wachana na hao wasichana.
Ai, wasichana gani mama?
Ukitaka bibi siku moja, enda kwa kanisa. Wachana na hii wasichana ya Instagram na TikTok.
Hata sina Instagram na TikTok.
Mwanamke ni roho.
Ai, tena si dada alisema ni tabia.
Sasa dad ni mwanamke. Si wacha nikwambie, mimi ndo najua mwanamke ni roho.
Mama, sikuwa naangalia mwanamke kwa Google.
Nyamaza nikwambie. Walisema mke mwema anatoka kwa Bwana. Unatoka unaenda wapi? Mke mwema anabaki kwa Bwana.
To get relationship advice by Mama Otis, dial *811*930#. Skiza na Nation.
With Molfix pants, changing diapers is now very easy. I tear and take off the used Molfix pants and pull the new one up in a moment. Wrap up the used diaper and throw it away. Come on, mothers, try Molfix baby pants and be part of our happiness movement.
Own your dream home for as low as 1.98 million Kenya shillings in Vipingo Kilifi. SMS Vipingo to 22365 or call us today on 0740 400 215. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, Mheshimiwa Deju Mureithi is sharing some of his thoughts already on how to address this perennial problem. We also have Mheshimiwa Keru with us in studio. And looking at this, let's leave and take a look at the most recent events. county governments, you were explaining before we took the break that, you know, this is something that has happened, these delays in release of funds from the National Treasury, something that has happened even when you are governor. You know, just give us an idea of how this impacts operations at the county level. Do you think Kenyans have a full understanding of the extent of the impact the delay in the release of the funds has?
Oh, well, it completely compromises service delivery. And if you allow, I would like to spend like a minute. Look, the Constitution devolved functions, so like health, for instance. So all the resources that used to go to health before devolution should have, you know, if we're doing things properly, been devolved. But health has been devolved, and a large proportion of the resources that we used to use to run health have stayed with the national government. So what happens, when there is a delay, you will get into labor issues. So the medics will say, look, we are going to go on strike, and they will. You will get into difficulties with your suppliers, KEMSA and others, who provide you drugs, and so on. So it just cascades into really compromising your ability as a county to provide services to their Kenyans. And
is this what contributes in part to the pending bills issue? Because there is a proposal that if, what should I call them? Businesses that the county engages are not paid on time, then the counties will suffer a penalty. So this pending bills issue, is it contributed to in part by these delays in the release of funds?
Well, the proposed legislation about prompt payments bill,
yes,
I think is ill-advised in seeking to cure an imaginary problem. Think about it like this. Today, or until this release you are talking about, counties, the disbursements to counties were 4 months behind.
Yes.
Now, obviously, we are now in the middle of May, so we have about 45 days to the end of the financial year. Actually, we should say like 30 days, because by June 15th, you begin closing, literally closing, and you don't book new transactions into IFMIS and so on. So you have 30 days. So these monies for 4 months, in some cases maybe even 5 months, even if they were to come today, you have 30 days with which to expend them. Now, obviously you can't do that. So what many counties end up having to have done, you already contracted somebody to do what was in the budget. You will come to the end of the financial year this June without having settled that person. So obviously you will have a pending bill. Now, even if you say you will penalize that county because of a pending bill, will you really have solved the problem? Because they are not the ones creating the problem. The behavior of the National Treasury is what is creating the problem, and I'm sure we'll come to what possible technical solution, not even technical, just straight administrative solutions that can unlock this problem.
All right. Mheshimiwa Kero, the other day the Council of Governors at the same press briefing where they threatened a shutdown, they accused senators, the sitting senators, of betraying devolution. And that is after, and like I said, I hosted Kwame Win on this subject as well. And he said, where the National Treasury is concerned, often the Treasury will tell them this, and they will ask, you know, how high should we jump? So in most times they will side with the National Treasury. But then the Senate has historically been known to be, in his words, the sobara of the two houses of Parliament. But in this instance, they agreed with the National Assembly, refused to increase the allocation, and retained it at 385, despite the recommendation by the Commission for Revenue Allocation to give counties 407 in the Division of Revenue Bill 2023. Do you, having served as chair of the Finance and Budget Committee in the Senate, you know what sort of pressure do you come under?
No, I think what happened in the Senate, let me first start, was really shocking. I mean, Senate exists for one purpose, to serve the interest, to protect the interests of the counties. That institution was created in the Constitution primarily for that purpose, so that national government does not ride, roughshod on the county governments. That's the primary reason. So at all times, we've been in the Senate, in the previous two Senates, 10 years. The Senate has always been at loggerheads with the National Assembly because of that they had always stood by the interest of the counties. And so always, had that argument. And we have gone into mediation several times, to try and get an agreement on the division of revenue bill. So it was shocking when Senate voted, and said, no, we stand with the national government. There's no money. Even what you're getting is too much. I had some senators say from one of the arid parts of Kenya, say, what we're giving is too much. We should in fact reduce. It comes from one of the poorest regions in this country, and so it's a shame what is happening. But it shows you how much things have evolved politically in this country, that we are now going to a situation where literally our politics has become like a one-party system, where everyone wants to bootlick the government. Everyone wants to be seen to be politically correct and belong to, even those who are in opposition. The rich one, these people are all jostling to join government. So this is unfortunate, and so what will happen is that is what I keep saying, is the death of our institutions. When these institutions die, then we will not have a country, I'm telling you. Today what is happening is this lack of independence of institutions which have been created by the Constitution to be independent, including Parliament. So I think what Senate did was really very unfortunate, and it gives you an indication of the tough times ahead for counties and for devolution in general. Because what will happen now, the national government will take cue from that look, if Senate has no problem, maybe we can not just delay. They can do away altogether. They can do some things that would have more adverse, effects on the running of counties. So I think what is happening is not a very good sign, because that checks and balance, the checks and balance that provided in the Constitution is critical. Those institutions were not just being created; they were created to ensure checks and balances, so that one arm of government can be checked by the other. But when you have a situation where everyone seems to pull in the same direction because of political expediency, then we lose, we have dropped the ball, and I think that's not the way to go.
All right. So as I keep mentioning, I have a Kenya in my ear by the name of Roslyn Obala. So she's asking, how did you handle the pressure? Just as I asked
pressure
previously.
Is there. You see, national government will always want to have their cake and eat it. But what they don't seem to appreciate in this Constitution is that the way we have structured our revenue collection is that all taxes will be collected by national government. So whether you are in, like Kipia or Mandera or wherever you are, every shilling that is to be collected in terms of revenue is collected nationally and then equitably shared out. And the criteria are all set out very clearly. Of course, the criteria in the Constitution is also very clear, and I think it's part of the reasons why National Treasury does some of the things it does, because it starts off by saying the factors that need to be looked at in determining how resources should be shared between the two levels of government, and starts with the interest of national interests. The first item becomes the national interest, the second becomes the public debt, the third becomes the development agenda and the national government and so on, and then county government. So the Treasury seems to think that the way those things have been listed, that they have been ranked deliberately, so that the national interest is always something they waive when they come to the Senate and say, look, national interest, we need that one, must be set aside. When we were in the Senate, national interest was the laptop project, was the Galana Pulalu. And we kept saying, you guys, this cannot be national interest. But those are the things that they would, and then the public debt and so forth. So the pressure by national government on Senate and everyone has always been there. But I think it's about, institutions are as good as the people who are there.
Indeed.
So if the people who are there stand up firm and say no, and we went, I think 3 of the 5 years I was in the Senate chair, we went for mediation, and we had to agree in the mediation between the National Assembly and the Senate on how much. Otherwise, we would not budge, and and that was our our position as much as possible to try and stand by what the CRA recommended. But quite often, I think what has happened in the last 10 years is to arrive at a figure between what the CRA has, the Commission of Revenue Allocation has recommended, and what the Treasury wants. We arrive at somewhere in the middle. But a situation has not arisen before this year, where National Treasury's figures are the ones that are endorsed by Senate, you know, without any pushback. Any fight, any pushback. I think that is so the pressure is there. Yes, you know, Treasury, State House, all of them calling, you know, guys, you know, we have no money. We say no, but you see. So I want to state two things before I conclude. And I think he alluded to it earlier. The two things which are very critical. One, in that criteria set out in the Constitution, the question of the functions that have been cascaded down to the county government is critical, because the resources will follow the functions. So if the functions have been given out to the counties, the funds for that should be given out. So that's primarily the way devolution was designed. And so when Kibaki in 2003, you know, gave out those functions, his administration, they actually gave us substantial amount of functions at once. For example, in health, over 90% of the functions of the health ministry was devolved. Similarly, agriculture. But even those ones that have not gone, like in water, like all these water service boards and all this water, you know, in the Constitution, clearly it's in the functions, it says it must go down to the county governments. So you have a situation where function has been given to a county government, but resources are not being sent. How will those counties now run? That's number one. Number two, which is very important, is that these resources, once they have been determined in the bill of the division of revenue, must be sent to county governments without delay and without any deduction. This is what the Constitution says. That means it's not a favor by Treasury. It's not for national government to try and canvass, you know, you guys, we have got challenges. No. Whatever has been determined as due to the county government must be sent immediately. That's what the Constitution says. So I think, in my view, Treasury is engaged in illegality. This is why I always like if the county governments go to court to fight with Treasury. I don't see any other, you know, the pushback must be felt. And this they did in the first Council of Governors. I keep saying that the Ritu and the subsequent governors are the weakest. These ones are the weakest today. And they've been going weaker and weaker and absorbed more into system. But you remember the first Council of Governors, they went to court I don't know how many times. Even Senate, we went to court, you remember, on the issue of this revenue, we went all the way to Supreme Court.
Yes,
so I think if these institutions, if you don't fight for your space, you're going to destroy these institutions. And there are no checks and balances, then there will be no county governments. And county governments, let me tell you, devolution is the single most important thing that has happened under this Constitution. It's being felt all over the country. I mean, so you cannot today say, I'm not sending money. And you just sit in Treasury and you're collecting revenue. Everyone knows you're collecting revenue because the figures of revenue are there, published by KRA every day. And you're not sending money. You say, I've got, other commitments. It's not about your commitments. It's what the Constitution says. You have sworn as a government that you've taken an oath that you are going to abide by the Constitution. The Constitution is to give the money to the counties. So give them their money and then deal with your problems internally of national government, but don't try to kill those other institutions. To me, that is important.
Okay. Speaking of Treasury, one of the proposals that has been made by the Council of Governors, thank you, is delinking Ministry of Finance from Treasury, and their position is that Treasury should act as sort of like in the same fashion as an independent commission, and they say that is because national government projects are prioritized at the expense of county governments. And I remember, like I mentioned, I had hosted Kwame Owino on this subject, and he said defense and security have already received 91% of their budget allocations for this last financial year, but the current financial year. But counties, I think he pegged the figure at about 53%.
Yeah, look, first of all, I'm forced to agree with Senator here that in the second cycle, or in the second set, the Council of Governors, in the time when I was there, in my view, we made a strategic mistake. In 2018 or so, actually late 2017, there was a view that, look, this confrontational relationship that the national government was having with the Council of Governors needed to evolve into, say, cooperation or detente, if you will. And I think that for the devolution, that was a strategic mistake, because the difficulty is exactly the way my colleague has explained, that because KRA is the one that collects the resources, and those resources are in a consolidated fund, and only Treasury basically can make those withdrawals from that consolidated fund, then that's what gives them power to squeeze, illegally, a devolution. And frankly, I would like to remind all of us as Kenya, two things. One is to re-emphasize what Bilo said, that devolution is the most important thing Kenya is doing today. If you think about issues of marginalization, I mean, look at 60% of Kenya that for years was left out of what I guess we call development, so physical infrastructure and so on. Many towns have seen the first kilometer of tarmac because there is devolution and so on. So, if devolution dies, and I want to argue that it is frankly in HDU, it's not yet in ICU, but it's not in the general ward, it is in HDU. If devolution dies, that whole promise of the Constitution for better equality and equity in Kenya will die with it. And I want to remind us that this is not, the first round of devolution in the 60s, before we were born, was killed exactly in the same manner. It was denied resources. The Senate was basically bribed into legislating itself out of existence. I see you look at me with surprise. But if you look at the archives, the Senate in the 60s were enticed by by becoming members of the National Assembly. So that they were told, okay, look, you won't lose your seat. What we will do, in your district, we create an additional constituency, and you don't have to go to the election, you simply become the member for that additional constituency. Major rigging, but that's exactly actually what happened. And the Senate ceased to exist. Now, the way the Senate is going, being a lapdog of the national executive, is a sure way for devolution to die. And the devolution in the first constitution was killed in exactly that manner of squeezing resources out of it. Because without resources, then the whole matter will cease to exist. So it's a big national question that I think any Kenyan of goodwill should stand up and call our senators to order. Because they have no other purpose. The Senate has no other purpose except the protection of devolution. Still, I want to conclude by saying there appears to be an even bigger culture of individual political figures or politicians or leaders, if you allow, completely doing away with questions of integrity and selling themselves to the highest bidder. And that's what is really going wrong, including with the story that we spend a little bit of time with, that you are in office because you are elected, say, as a senator of a particular county. Your job is to protect the interests of that county. It's not to go and for a few trinkets, sell your soul to the national executive.
Yeah, and it's something I'm hearing Mheshimiwa Kero, the point he keeps making is institutions have to stand firm.
Yeah, you see, the point is, first of all, let me start by saying, if there is political goodwill, you wouldn't have this problem of delaying money to the counties.
Indeed.
You've seen this government show a lot of goodwill, for example, to judiciary. Day one, the president was sworn and he said, okay, judiciary now, I'll set up judiciary fund, you get your money. Police, get to your accounting officer, get your money. And you've had army, everybody else whom they wanted, they get the money. There's no problem with exchequer. But this one, which is provided for in the constitution explicitly that you must release their money without delay, you are not giving them. Why? There's no political will. And generally that has been, unfortunately, you know, the case. I know these leaders because we work with them. There's no political will when it comes to devolution. What we still have in our culture is many of our leaders have not internalized some of the provisions in this constitution about, for example, about devolution, because devolution essentially meant some of the powers, some of the functions of national government has gone down. This is something that these leaders have not internalized. The president still believes in this country that you should go to my county and we queue and bring a memorandum and say, Your Excellency, we need development. Please give us that road and please do this hospital for me and put up that school for us. This is still the culture. This is why you find many leaders still going to government and saying we want to be in government. Our people cannot be out of government. And you know, the president, when he's coming, people have a wish list. Yet the constitution has really moved that power away. We don't have an imperial presidency in this country. If you look at this constitution, the powers for resource allocation was given to parliament. It's up to parliament to decide who gets what. But we don't appreciate that. We still believe. So what has happened is that national leaders have tended to think that they still have the powers, and so it has resulted in a lot of duplication. It has resulted in resources being kept here. The amount of money that goes to some of the ministries here, which have limited roles in the county, you'll be shocked. Water ministry, agriculture ministry, health ministries, and many of the ministries, that really that money should have all gone to the. So, and national government's role was to develop policy. So I think that is one of the challenges. The second is, we have looked at, so when we were designing this, when we were coming up with this constitution in 2003, I chaired the technical working committee that developed most of these chapters, like public finance chapter, and we went through all these things. But, you know, we created the office of the institution of the Commission on Revenue Allocation, essentially, to avoid Treasury taking control of all the resources and determining who gets what, you know, which is what it was for 50 years before that. And so today, that responsibility for determining how much money should go to national government and how much should go to county government in the division of revenue should be determined by CRA. But the constitution, you will appreciate, in the final stages in Naivasha, when it was being whatever, it was handed over to National Assembly to finalize it. And so a lot of the things that we have seen, the gray areas in this constitution, happened that time. I remember getting a call in the middle of the night from the chair of that committee in Parliament, which was when they were in Naivasha, that there was an attempt by Treasury to even remove CRA in the final stages of that constitution. They wanted even CRA to be completely removed. And I remember sending, you know, going back and researching on the situation in Nigeria, South Africa, other countries who have similar, saying, no, if you remove that, then there's no point for devolution. Because then Treasury will determine what happens, and they will not really send money to the counties. So what we have as a CRA is weakened, really. Because if you look at countries like India, countries like South Africa, other countries, what this commission recommends is final. It's not a recommendation which is sent to Parliament, and then Parliament is at liberty to determine whether to accept or reject it. No, the recommendation in essence means it's binding on the national, on Parliament, and actually even our constitution says Parliament shall consider the recommendations of the CRA. So that means if CRA says give 450 billion, you know, that is what you should consider more than what Treasury says. This is essentially what is implied even in our constitution. But you know, I think the future is, we must, if there's an opportunity ever to amend this constitution, which is very unlikely, and we did suggest this in the bill that we submitted for Senate when we proposed a few years ago to raise Senate to the upper house, that it should be binding. That's one of the fundamental things. Any recommendation for division of revenue between the two levels of government by CRA shall be binding. I think that is the most important. Once you get that legislated, the question of, because they look at all aspects of both sides of government, and I think, and they're independent, and that's the essence of it. Treasury, if you try to create Treasury as an independent institution, as in other countries, there are countries where Treasury is an independent board. In paper you can do it, but in practice it will not. Well, we have seen institutions, how many institutions are independent in the Constitution today? If you look at that chapter 15, there are many institutions that have been created to be independent, but they actually are no longer independent. And we've just discussed Parliament as one of them that has ceased to be independent. So creating an institution is not the challenge we have in this country. The challenge is whether that institution, when it is created, is going to be independent. So in my view, I think creating that, separating treasury and finance is not going to be a solution, for the simple reason that people here in this country, people are worried about jobs. You become a chairman and a board member of that, you're worried about who appointed you. It's the boss. I'll do what the boss wants.
Right.
That's my view.
Okay. Well, how about you, Mheshimiwa Murithi? I keep hearing that debt is a fast charge, right, on the consolidated fund. And I had the Deputy President when he met with governors in Mombasa some time back. He said, even if you pull down our trousers and you whip us, there is simply no money. So what is the solution there? Because I was chatting with Mika Cheserem and he was saying maybe we can look at the minute KRA collects funds, the county money is set aside and the rest.
Well, first of all, I think we go back to the point, even if you create an institution and you put individuals in that institution who for some reason are willing to sell themselves short, who are willing to abrogate, if you will, their responsibility, then the institution won't work. So the question is not just creating an additional institution. Allow me to explain. Senator has dealt with the quantum, the amount, so the division
yes.
of the total amount. Then there is how much goes to which county, which we say horizontal, or the County Allocation of Revenue Act, which specifies how much to Mandera, how much to Laikipia, how much to Nairobi.
Yes.
That bill, that act, usually has a disbursement schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So it will say, 6 billion to this county, and it will give a monthly schedule. How much will be paid or will be disbursed to that county in every specific month?
Yes.
And that is law. Now, what really should surprise you would be something like this. Why does an administrative officer, an officer, a senior officer, taking an administrative action of writing a little email to central bank be the origination of the disbursement? The central bank already has that schedule.
Mm.
If the central bank governor had actually in his spine, they would proceed to disburse according to that schedule, because it is the law. You don't have to wait. You see, it's like when you do a standing order in your bank account, the bank does not wait at the end of the month for you to write again to say, oh, may I, please disburse. So, now technically also, the National Treasury maintains an overdraft account at the central bank. So if on the disbursement day, say 22nd of every month, if there isn't enough funds in the consolidated account, what should happen is that you draw on that overdraft. So it is not really the question of whether we need an additional institution. The really problem we should be solving, how come the individuals that are leading our key institutions today, independent though they might be, are not exercising that independence? And it is across everything that we're doing. Look at the police service. The whole attempt in the Constitution is to give the police independence so that they are not used by the executive as an instrument of state oppression. The whole point of having IPOA, you know, independent police oversight authority, is to provide a mechanism to bring sanity and oversight into the way the police service. And remind you, service, not force. It's supposed to serve the citizen. How it works. Why is that not working? We have just talked extensively about the Senate and about the National Assembly itself. Why do we see politicians saying, oh, I went to State House for the sake of development? Yet, there is nothing truly that the president can promise you that will not have to go through Parliament. So even if the president promises you, we are going to build a dam in your county, that dam, you know, he's not financing it from his own pocket. He's financing it using the budget, which you, as a member of the National Assembly, have to pass. And if you don't pass it, the president cannot do what they have promised. You know, I'll just give you an example. You know, while I was serving in governor in Laikipia, I found an existing debt owed to the county by the treasury. Now, the national government owns property, just like other entities, and they have to pay property taxes. Now, in the law, it's called contribution in lieu of rates. So I found that the national government had not paid Laikipia. And I said to the national government, pay up. And for a couple of years there, the treasury took me around in circles. Who intervened? The very National Assembly. You know, the National Assembly simply said, this debt is owed, and here, we are reducing from what you are saying here, and you must pay Laikipia. And Treasury followed suit and paid. So, you know, the Assembly has incredible power. They are the ones to decide how this money is spent. But parliamentarians are throwing away that independence and that power for reasons that, frankly, perhaps my colleague
I think
can
the question
explain.
you asked, yes, it's true that public debt has a preference in terms of payments. But when you have the public debt, you have borrowed money. How much of that loan that you have borrowed has actually gone to the counties? Let me give you an example. Uhuru borrowed almost 6 trillion in his 10 years, 6 trillion. The total allocation that has gone to county governments has been, for the 10 years, was 3 trillion. And you can see clearly that even this government, they have borrowed now over 570, according to the figures in the published, 578 billion in the few months they've been in office. How much of that has gone to the county governments? Because when you're borrowing, you look at the way the government is borrowing. Their program is not about borrowing that it's inclusive of the needs of county governments to a large extent. Even the little money that has been allocated by donors, for example, World Bank and so forth, you remember the projects. Up to now, it took Parliament almost a whole year to agree on how that money, that bill was to be passed. I think it was only a couple of weeks ago.
No,
so so loans, yes, have preferential right to be paid. But when you are borrowing, put it into consideration that these loans will have an impact on the counties. This is why we've been asking National Assembly, please don't allow national government to borrow, because the more they borrow, the less money that they will be available to be shared out to counties. But I think the most important thing is that national government, even when they are borrowing, they should take into consideration the needs of counties, so that sometimes some of those loans should be loans that should benefit county governments themselves directly, so that they're getting access to, you know, those loans. But if you're simply borrowing money to build a railway in Nairobi, and you tell me, Mandara, I can't get money because you know I have to pay SGR. I mean, how is SGR assisting? How is it going to assist me? So I think there's a disconnect between the government's rationalization in terms of, you know, keeping money for servicing loans and the needs, which is what the Constitution says very clearly. Even in development, the Constitution, if you look at the principles of public finance, is very clear. It says development must be equitable.
Okay.
equitable development needs of the country is what is important. But when you say, I want to develop a particular area, a particular region, and you don't care about what happens to the others. We've lived in a country, personally some of us, we are not very happy. In fact, when the other day, last week, Alonso mentioned that, this alienation, of people by government, the way they are doing the appointments and so forth. I tweeted that I support that fully, because it's what David Ndii used to say, if the marriage doesn't work, you just need to quit. We came together as a nation. So when you are doing development, development is not just about roads you're building. Resources are not just about the finances. Even the appointments to public offices, which are so skewed, it doesn't make sense anymore. Even the visits by the president. Uhuru spent 10 years. He never visited most of the 10 arid regions in this country, in the 10 years, including my county. Absolutely. Including, and I was just talking to my friend who comes from Kitale, which is a bread basket where all the maize came from. He spent 10 years. He's never been to those regions. Today, the current president is done now 7-8 months. Mm-hmm. People are dying in 23 counties. No, in the starvation. Mm-hmm. That we've gone through the worst drought. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't find it necessary to even visit those Turkana, go to Mandera, go to places where people are dying, starving, Marsabit, and find out what's going on. Just even that visit alone makes a lot of difference. You're not bothered. Mm-hmm. You'll be shuttling between Nairobi and Murang'a and places where you think you're worried about the votes all the time. So I don't think that is the way, we can run a nation and we can live together as a society. Slowly by slowly, people will start feeling that they're not part of this country. And the only reason why people have been, together this devolution helped. At least your county was getting something. You are running your little hospital and you're running your small. Now when that money is not going to go down, I'm telling you, we get into a situation where people in this country will feel, that they don't belong anymore. And it's not a very good thing. I think we should share resources equitably. Government should be concerned about every part of this country. And so loans should not just be collected for the purpose of doing big mega projects in Nairobi. They should look at the impact of that loan on what will go down to the counties.
All right. I'm looking at the clock and I'm seeing our time is out. But quickly, you had the last
I think it was just the same point. You should take the national debt and ask yourself, how much of it was for the benefit of Mandera, or for the benefit of Wajir, or for the benefit of Laikipia? Because if you're saying, wait, hold on, Laikipia, you wait a little bit, because I have to pay national debt, how much of that was for the benefit of Laikipia? And how can we be equitable if all this national debt is to perhaps develop infrastructure or other things in 5 or 10 counties to the exclusion of the other 20 or 30? And that cannot be equitable.
All right. So I have to end AM Live here, but perhaps if you have occasion to come back, I would pose the question that Ndindi Nyoro posed when he was taken to task over the 385, which I read was passed in a day, that counties also bear responsibility to raise their own revenue. I know there's the argument of you cannot compare the counties in their ability in that regard. I know entertainment, is it parks and property rates, some of what parking.
Well, in which case we should say Kenyans should not be paying taxes to the national government. And frankly, me, I'm at the point where I think we should go into tax boycott.
No. I think
because look, we pay taxes so that we get services. Now, those services used to be provided from the center. We made a constitution so that those services can be provided at by the county level, so that it is more responsive to our needs at the county. So, since the services have moved to county level, what business do we have paying taxes to the national level?
No.
All right, so I have to end it there, unfortunately.
Okay.
I will ask them to come back again. My name is Olive Burrows. You've been watching AM Live. We've had in studio Bilo Kero, Nderitu Mureithi, and coming up is TV Meets Radio, The Morning Fix, with Nation FM. So keep it, NTV.